Hey there, my name is Chris Arter, and I'm going to show you how to set up a local database with Laravel and Docker. This is a really simple setup. You don't have to use MAMP or any other database tool. It's just using Docker Compose, a single config file. You can spin it up, and you have a database right there, ready to go. So we're going to dive in, and what I'm going to show you is how to set up your Docker Compose file, how to set up your env, and then after we're done, I'm going to show you how to access your database inside of a database tool. I'll be using Table Plus, but you can use any database tool that you feel comfortable with. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to set up a database in Docker for local dev. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll walk you through it step by step. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a Docker file, Docker Compose file, sorry, Docker Compose.yaml. And if you name your file docker-compose, then your Docker will know to use this for Docker Compose. One side note, you'll need Docker Desktop installed to do this tutorial. So head over to docker.com and download Docker Desktop. All right, so let's start with this file I have here. I'm going to paste this in here, but I'm going to walk you through each line so that you know why we're doing all the things in here. So first off, we're going to start with the version. This just tells us what version of Docker Compose that we're going to use. 3.8 is the latest as of this video. Services, so this describes the services that Docker Compose is going to kind of wire together. Right now, we only have one service. That's the DB. So we are going to describe, let's say, the image that we want it to use. So we're going to start with MariaDB. And MariaDB is a fork of MySQL. It's the same thing, but I find that it works really well for local. It's just overall bulletproof. So it's a great image to use for local DBs or production. So let's go to ports. So ports is going to show us how we're going to access this container once it's running. So right now it's set up to 3306, and that's mapping to 3306. And that's how this notation works. It sort of separates it by a semicolon. And we're telling it, hey, map this port to this port. Next, we're going to do our environment. And the environment is going to give this image the information it needs to run so we can access it. So we're going to set the database, we're going to set the user, and we're going to set the password. And this doesn't look super secure, right? And that's okay, because we are on local dev, and we're just doing root to access the database. This is not being used in any kind of production sense whatsoever. This is just local. Next is going to be our volumes. So this part is somewhat important. So this will show Docker Compose where to store the data in the database, where to persist it. So what that means is when we start Docker Compose and we stop Docker Compose, any data that we write while we're using it will stay there. So we can start Docker Compose, insert a user, and then let's say that we're done. So we turn off Docker Compose, we shut the container down. That data will still be there. So we can start it back up, and our user that we created is still there. So what that will do is that will actually create a folder inside of our project repository, our project root right here called DB data. This can be called anything. I just happen to call it DB data. So it's up to you what you want to call it. But when we run this, it's going to create a folder automatically in this root directory. The one thing we need to note is we need to make sure that we add the DB data to our git ignore. So let's just do DB data here and save that. That means that we don't want GitHub to version and save all the information that's inside of that file, because it's not really important. It's just data that we use to test locally and to develop. So we're going to go back here, save this. Next, we're going to go into our environment variable, our environment file, and we're going to add the password for that guy and save it. We also need to run this command, and what this does is it tells Laravel to take all of the data inside of here and make it available for cache. And that's important because when connecting to the database, it doesn't read this file. It reads the cache of this file. So we need to make sure that we recache this file so that it can connect to this, so it can use the most up-to-date information. So anytime we change this file, we need to make sure that we run config cache. And you can see that that actually does two things when we run it. It clears the previous cache, and it caches the env as it is now, which is exactly what we want to do. All right, so let's just double check here. We've got our Docker Compose file, we've got our env, and now we can run Docker Compose up d. There it goes. It's starting our container. It says done. And then you'll notice that it inserted DB data. And this is the folder that all of the MySQL information is going to be stored in. That's where our database is going to live, the files for it. So now we should be able to run migrate. Uh-oh, it's gone away. Okay, so we need to wait until it's ready. So it's still starting. There we go. So now it's connected to the database, it's run its migrations, and it's ready to go. Next, what we can do is we can actually see this database here. So let's go and create a new connection. We'll just call it MySQL create. This is the host, 3306. The username is root. Password is root. And the database is Laravel. Let's test the connection. Looks all good, all green. Connect, and here we are. So this is the database that we just migrated. And this is our tables and everything that's described in our migrations looks like it's here. And you can see all of that. So there you have it. Now you're running a database on local. You can access through your database tool, and it's all set up right there in your project. The next thing we're going to be doing is adding Laravel itself inside of a container and let Docker Compose wire the database and Laravel together inside of that network. For now, this should give you enough leeway to go and get started and start running migrations and learning how that works. So please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and there's more to come.